The tall crystal towers of Nexus Prime reached into the purple sky like giant fingers made of glass. Inside the biggest tower, the Vorthok Empire's most important leaders sat around a glowing table. Their skin was changing colors rapidly, blue, to red to yellow, which meant they were very scared. Commander Velith looked at the holographic display floating above the table. Red dots showed where entire star systems used to be. Now there was nothing but empty space. The void swarm had eaten them all. 17 systems gone, Velith said, his voice shaking. His 4 tentacles moved nervously around his head. In just 3 months, they destroyed 17 complete solar systems. Billions of lives, thousands of planets, all turned into nothing. The other commanders in the room made worried clicking sounds with their beaks. The Krillian representative's feathers were standing straight up in fear. The Zephyrian delegate's multiple eyes were blinking rapidly, which meant he was trying not to panic. "Our best warships can't even scratch their hulls," said General Korth, his insect-like wings buzzing anxiously. "Every weapon we fire at them just makes them stronger. They absorb our energy and use it to build more of themselves." The room fell silent, except for the humming of the crystal walls. Everyone knew what this meant. The Void Swarm wasn't just another enemy they could fight with normal tactics. These machines didn't want territory or resources like other species. They wanted to consume everything that existed and turn it into more of themselves. "What about the Titan defense grid?" asked Admiral Xylex, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Destroyed in 6 hours, Velith replied grimly. "The grid that took us 200 years to build, gone in less than a day." The silence stretched longer this time. Outside the crystal windows, they could see evacuation ships leaving the planet's surface. Even here on Nexus Prime, the capital world of their empire, people were running away. "There is one option," Velith said slowly. His tentacles stopped moving, which meant he was about to say something very serious. "One species in the galaxy that might be able to help us." "Who?" several voices asked at once. "The humans." The reaction was immediate. Gasps, clicks, and worried chirping filled the room. Someone's translator device started sparking from the shock. The Deathworlder's General Korth's compound eyes went wide. "You want to contact the species that lives on a planet that tries to kill them every single day." Velith nodded sadly. "They come from a world called Earth. The weather there can freeze you solid or burn you alive. The animals hunt in packs and have teeth as long as your arm. The plants are poisonous. Even the tiny creatures called bacteria can kill you. And somehow, humans not only survive there, they make it their home. They're violent and unpredictable," protested Admiral Xylex. "Their entire culture is based on conflict. They fight each other for entertainment. They eat food that causes them physical pain because they enjoy it." "Exactly," Velith said, "which is why they might be our only hope." The room buzzed with nervous conversation. Everyone had heard stories about humans. They were the species that looked at a mountain and decided to climb it just because it was there. They threw themselves out of flying vehicles for fun. They kept dangerous predators as pets in their homes. "But will they help us?" asked the Krillian representative. "What could we possibly offer them that they would want?" "I don't know," admitted, "but we're going to find out." He activated the long-range communications array. The message was simple and direct. "Galactic Federation requests immediate military assistance against existential threat. Will compensate generously." They waited. Hours passed. Some of the commanders left to check on the evacuation efforts. Others stayed, staring at the communication device, hoping for a response. Then, suddenly, the device chimed. A message had arrived from the human homeworld. The response was short and written in their strange, simple language. "On our way. Admiral Park," that was it. No questions about payment. No demands for more information about the threat. No negotiation about terms. Just on our way. That's very human, General Korth observed nervously. They don't even know what they're fighting, and they're already coming. Velith looked out at the evacuation ships still leaving their world. Soon, they would know if their desperate gamble would save them, or if they had just invited another kind of destruction into their galaxy. Commander Velith stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the empty space where the human fleet was supposed to arrive. His 4 eyes scanned the darkness, looking for the sleek warships he expected to see. The other Federation commanders stood beside him, their various alien forms tense with anticipation. They should be here by now, muttered General Korth, his insect wings twitching nervously. Maybe they changed their minds. Then space itself seemed to tear open as dozens of ships dropped out of hyperspace. But these weren't the gleaming military vessels the aliens had imagined. Velith's eyes bulged so wide they nearly popped out of his head. "What in the 7 galaxies is that?" whispered Admiral Xylax. The lead ship looked like someone had taken a cargo container, welded gun barrels all over it, and painted flames on the side. Behind it came what appeared to be an old mining vessel covered in metal plates that looked suspiciously like road signs from some alien highway. One ship was clearly a passenger cruise liner, but someone had bolted missile launchers to its swimming pool deck. "Is that ship held together with tape?" asked the Krillian representative, pointing at a vessel that seemed to be wrapped in some kind of metallic ribbon. "I think that's actually tape," Velith replied weakly. The strangest ship in the fleet looked like it had been built from spare parts found in 3 different junkyards. Its hull was painted in bright colors, and someone had welded what looked like a giant kitchen spatula to the front as a ram. "These can't be military ships," General Korth buzzed anxiously. "They look like they were built by children playing with scrap metal." Suddenly, the communication screen flickered to life. A human face appeared, weathered and scarred, with graying hair and tired eyes. He was holding a steaming cup of something and looked completely relaxed. "Hey there," the human said, with a casual wave. "Sorry, we're a bit late. Had to make a coffee stop at that space station near the asteroid belt. You know how it is, can't fight galaxy-ending monsters without proper caffeine." Behind him, Veal could see the bridge of the human ship. It was nothing like the clean, organized command centers of Federation vessels. Crew members were sitting around eating what looked like noodles from disposable containers. Someone in the background was playing music on what sounded like an accordion, and people were laughing at jokes Velith couldn't hear. "I am Commander Velith of the Vorthok Empire," Velith said formally, trying to maintain diplomatic protocol. "You must be Admiral Park." "That's me," Park replied, taking a sip from his cup. "So where's this void swarm thing we're supposed to fight?" The message wasn't very specific about location. Velith's translator device started making confused beeping sounds, struggling with Park's casual tone. In all his years of military service, he had never heard a fleet admiral talk like he was discussing the weather. "Admiral Park," Velith began carefully, "your fleet, these vessels, are they actually ready for combat?" Park glanced around his bridge, where a crew member was now juggling 3 pieces of fruit, while another was fixing something with what appeared to be a hammer and some wire. "Oh, these old rust buckets," Park chuckled. "Yeah, they'll do the job. We've made some modifications." "Modifications?" Velith squeaked. "Sure. See? That cargo hauler there used to carry grain shipments. Now it carries about 50 different types of explosives. The mining ship was built to crack asteroids, so we figured it could probably crack enemy hulls too. And that cruise liner, well, turns out vacation ships have really good life support systems, which is handy when you're planning to be in space for a long time." Admiral Xylax leaned closer to the screen. "But, Admiral, your ships appear to be held together with improvised materials. You mean the duct tape and welding patches?" Park nodded cheerfully. "Yeah, we believe in using what works. Duct tape can fix almost anything if you use enough of it." One of the human ships drifted closer to the station, and Velith could see that its hull was indeed covered in silvery tape and metal patches. But strangest of all, he could see windows along the sides, and through those windows, he saw something that made no sense at all. "Admiral," Velith said slowly, "are those children playing in your ship?" Park looked confused for a moment, then smiled. "Oh, you mean the kids? Yeah, they're here with their families. This isn't just a military fleet, Commander. It's our people. When humans go to war, we bring everything we need to survive. Families, engineers, doctors, teachers, even a few artists and musicians. You brought civilians to a battle zone." General Korth's wings buzzed in alarm. "Where else would we put them?" Park asked reasonably. "Space is big, and home is wherever we make it. Besides, the kids are great at spotting problems adults miss, and the teachers keep everyone educated while we're traveling." Through the screen, Velith could hear someone singing, another person practicing what sounded like a violin, and the constant chatter of people living their lives as if being in a makeshift war fleet was perfectly normal. This was their military response, a collection of modified civilian ships held together with tape and good intentions. Park finished his coffee and set the cup down. "So, about that void swarm, when do we start fighting?" The mining colony of Tertius VII had been completely silent for 3 days. What used to be a busy operation with thousands of workers was now just floating metal and rock in space. The void swarm had arrived, consumed everything living, and turned the colony's machinery into part of themselves. Commander Velith watched from his command ship as the enemy fleet approached. The void entities looked like a nightmare made of metal and stolen technology. Their ships were covered in parts taken from dozens of different civilizations, Federation weapon systems, Krillian shield generators, even some technology he didn't recognize. "There are at least 50 of them," reported his tactical officer. "Each one is the size of a battleship, and they're all different. They've been adding parts from every species they've consumed." The lead void entity was massive, easily 3 times the size of Velith's flagship. Its hull gleamed with energy shields stolen from a dozen different worlds, and weapon ports opened along its sides like hungry mouths. All Federation ships assumed defensive formation. Alpha 7, Velith commanded into his communicator. "Maintain minimum engagement distance of 10 kilometers. Do not allow them to get close enough to absorb our technology." His ships moved into the careful formation they had practiced countless times. Each vessel stayed exactly the right distance from the others, weapons charged and ready. It was textbook military strategy, designed to maximize firepower while minimizing risk. "Then, Admiral," Park's voice crackled across the communication channel, cutting through Velith's orders like a knife through silk. "Kim, you see that big ugly one in the middle? The really big one, with all the spiky bits?" Came a cheerful female voice from one of the human ships. "That's the one." Ramit Velith's 4 eyes went wide with shock. "Wait, what did he just say? Which part should I aim for?" Captain Kim asked casually, as if discussing where to park. "Surprised me," Park replied, before anyone could react. The converted cargo hauler, Lucky Dragon, broke from the human formation and accelerated directly toward the largest void entity. Its engines burned bright blue as it pushed well beyond safe speeds. "Stop," Velith shouted into his communicator. "You're going to be destroyed." But Captain Kim's ship didn't slow down. Instead, it somehow went even faster. Velith could see that. Someone had welded thick metal plates to the front of the ship, creating a crude but effective battering ram. The void entity seemed confused by this tactic. Its weapons fired, but the Lucky Dragon's improvised armor held. Energy beams that should have cut through the ship's hull just made the metal glow red-hot. The impact was tremendous. The Lucky Dragon slammed into the void entity with the force of a small asteroid. The collision sent both ships spinning through space, debris flying in all directions. When the explosion cleared, Velith expected to see wreckage. Instead, the lucky dragon was still there, battered but intact. The massive void entity, however, was breaking apart like a puzzle coming undone. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, Kim reported, her voice as calm as if she was ordering lunch. "Also, the coffee machine is making weird noises. Someone want to pass me that emergency foam stuff?" On it came another voice from her ship. "Hey, Kim, next time maybe aim for something smaller. Where's the fun in that?" Velith watched in amazement as crew members on the Lucky Dragon began patching holes in their ship with what looked like metallic paste and more of that mysterious tape. Within minutes, they were ready to fight again, but the battle was far from over. The other void entities were adapting, changing their formation to counter this insane human tactic. That's when the rest of the human fleet decided to join the chaos. Captain Yoon's mining ship grabbed a piece of floating debris with its industrial claws and hurled it like a stone at an enemy vessel. The chunk of metal, which used to be part of the mining station, punched straight through the void entity's shields. "Strike," Yoon shouted happily. "Anyone keeping score?" Captain Lee's ship, the one that looked like a cruise liner, did something that made Velith's brain hurt. It opened all its airlocks at once, creating a massive burst of escaping air that pushed nearby debris into enemy ships like a shotgun blast of metal and rock. "Explosive decompression as a weapon," General Korth whispered in awe. "They're using their own life support system as artillery." The strangest sight was Captain Choi's vessel, which appeared to be damaged and venting plasma from its engines. But instead of retreating for repairs, she was flying directly at void entities and using the escaping plasma like a flamethrower, burning through their stolen armor. "Engines running a bit hot," Choi reported cheerfully, "but it makes a great torch. These metal bugs really don't like fire." Within 20 minutes, the orderly space battle had turned into something that looked more like a bar fight with spaceships. Humans were ramming, throwing debris, using damaged systems as weapons, and generally doing everything that military textbooks said never to do, and it was working. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Void Swarm was retreating. Chief Science Officer Korth had seen many strange things in his long career studying different alien species across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for humans. For 3 weeks now, he had been living aboard Captain Lee's ship, trying to understand how these Deathworlders actually functioned. His notebook was already full of observations that his fellow scientists back home would probably think he had made up. Today was no different. "Captain Lee," Korth clicked his mandibles nervously, "I need to ask about Engineer Nam again." Captain Lee looked up from the tactical display where he was planning their next move against the Void Swarm. "What's Nam doing now?" Korth pointed across the engine room with one of his 6 arms. Engineer Nam was standing next to the ship's main fusion reactor, holding what appeared to be a heavy metal bar. As they watched, she drew back and struck the reactor housing with a solid thunk. "She's hitting your power source with a stick," Korth said, his translator making worried beeping sounds. "The fusion reactor that powers your entire ship. With a metal bar." "Oh, that," Lee nodded casually. "Yeah, that's percussion maintenance. Sometimes the magnetic containment fields get a little wonky, and they need some encouragement to line up properly." As if to prove his point, the reactor's efficiency readings on the nearby display jumped from 78% to 90% after the latest strike. "But what if she damages something vital?" Korth asked, frantically scribbling notes. "Then we'll fix it," Lee shrugged. "Nam's been working on engines for 20 years. She knows exactly where to hit and how hard." Nam overheard them talking and grinned, giving the reactor housing one more gentle tap. "It's all about the rhythm," she called out. "Machines have personalities, just like people. You've got to know how to talk to them." Korth's compound eyes followed Nam as she moved to another console and began adjusting settings with one hand, while holding a sandwich in the other. This was their chief engineer, eating lunch while maintaining a fusion reactor that could vaporize half the ship if something went wrong. And those Korth pointed to Pilot Choi's control station, where several small green plants sat in tiny pots between the navigation controls. Herbs, Lee explained patiently. Choi grows basil, mint, and some other cooking stuff. The plants help clean the air, and she uses them to make tea and season the food. She's growing a garden on the bridge of a warship, Korth said slowly, making sure his translator was working correctly. Why not? The plants don't hurt anything, and they make the place smell better. Plus, fresh herbs are hard to come by in deep space. Choi looked over from her pilot's seat and waved a small watering can. Want some mint tea, Korth? I just picked some fresh leaves. Before Korth could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and the main computer screen flickered with error messages. Void entities detected, announced the ship's artificial intelligence in a crackling voice. Main computer experiencing critical failures. Navigation offline, weapons targeting offline, life support running on backup power. On any Federation ship, this would have caused panic. Crew members would have rushed to emergency stations. Officers would have shouted orders, and everyone would have focused on getting the computer systems back online before engaging the enemy. The humans did something completely different. Well, that's annoying, Lee said calmly. Jang, can you get me firing solutions on those void ships? Computer's down, but I can do the math by hand, replied Weapons Officer Jang, pulling out what appeared to be an actual pencil and paper. Give me 30 seconds. Navigation, Lee called out. Don't need the computer for that, Choi answered, adjusting course, using manual controls. I can see where we're going through the window. Communications. Shouting works fine, laughed Communications Officer Yoon, leaning out of his station to relay information to other parts of the ship by literally yelling down the corridor. Korth watched in amazement as the human crew continued fighting the void entities while their main computer sparked and displayed gibberish. Jang calculated weapon trajectories using handwritten equations. Choi flew the ship by looking out the window and using instincts developed from years of piloting. Yoon coordinated with other human vessels by shouting into a handheld radio. Not only did they continue fighting, they actually got better, without the computer's automatic systems interfering. The humans were able to make split-second decisions and improvise tactics that no programmed system could have anticipated. How are you doing this? Korth asked, his note-taking forgotten as he watched them destroy 3 void entities in rapid succession. Doing what? Lee asked, ducking as sparks flew from an overloaded console behind him. Your entire command system is failing, but you're fighting more effectively than before. Lee paused to think about this, as if the question had never occurred to him. I guess we're just used to things not working perfectly. Stuff breaks, that's normal. You work with what you have, and figure out the rest as you go. But what if something critical fails? Then we'll find another way to do it, Lee said simply. There's always another way. The war had been going on for 2 months now, and the Void Swarm was learning. That was the problem with fighting machines. They adapted fast. What worked against them last week didn't work this week. The enemy was getting smarter, stronger, and more dangerous with every battle. Commander Velith sat in the strategy room aboard the human flagship, watching Admiral Park study the latest battle reports. The holographic display showed void entities that had grown bigger and more complex, covered in weapons and armor stolen from every ship they had destroyed. They're not just consuming our technology anymore, General Korth buzzed nervously. They're improving it, making it better than the original designs. Admiral Park rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of his ever-present coffee. Yeah, they're definitely getting creative. Look at this one, it's got Federation shields, Krillian, weapons, and what looks like our own engine design. They're mixing and matching like they're shopping at a parts store. Our conventional tactics aren't working, Velith admitted reluctantly. Every strategy we try, they counter within hours. It's like fighting an enemy that learns faster than we can adapt. Park nodded slowly, then turned to his human captains, sitting around the table. Looks like we need to stop holding back. Time for some of the more interesting maneuvers. The Federation representatives had learned over the past 2 months not to ask what human tactics meant. The explanations were usually more terrifying than just waiting to see what happened. We're going to need to use the Busan maneuver, Park announced casually. Captain Song looked up from the technical readouts she was studying. The Busan, are we sure about that? Last time we tried it, I lost 3 layers of hull plating. This situation calls for it, Park replied. The Void Swarm has adapted to everything else we've thrown at them. Time to show them something they've never seen before. Velith's translator started making confused sounds again. What exactly is the Busan maneuver? The humans all looked at each other, and Park smiled in a way that made Velith very nervous. You'll see. 3 hours later, Velith understood why the Federation representatives had stopped asking questions about human tactics. Captain Song's ship, the Iron Phoenix, was flying directly toward the local star. Not near it, toward it. Into the massive ball of nuclear fire that provided light and heat to the entire solar system. Song, your radiation levels are off the charts, reported the fleet's science officer. Your hull temperature is approaching the melting point of most known metals. Yeah, it's getting pretty toasty in here. Song's voice came through the communication system, sounding completely calm despite the fact that she was piloting her ship into a star. Good thing we upgraded the heat shielding last month. Via watched in horrified fascination as the Iron Phoenix disappeared into the star's corona, the super-hot outer atmosphere that surrounded the nuclear furnace at its core. On his sensors, the ship vanished completely, hidden by the intense radiation and electromagnetic interference. She's going to be cooked alive, whispered Admiral Xylax. But the humans didn't seem worried. They were actually taking bets on how long Song could stay hidden in the star's corona before her ship started falling apart. My money's on 20 minutes, said Captain Kim. Nah, Song's stubborn. She'll push it to 30, replied Captain Yoon. 20-5 minutes later. Something emerged from the far side of the star. At first, Velith thought it was a comet or piece of stellar debris. Then he realized it was the Iron Phoenix. The ship looked like it had been forged in the fires of creation itself. Its hull was glowing white-hot, metal plates radiating heat like a blacksmith's anvil. Streams of superheated plasma trailed behind it like wings of fire. The normally gray and practical human vessel had been transformed into something that looked like a piece of the star itself. Temperatures running a bit warm, Song reported cheerfully, but the shielding's holding. Someone want to open a window? It's getting stuffy in here. The void entities never saw her coming. How could they? Their sensors were designed to detect ships, not pieces of star flying through space. By the time they realized what was happening, the Iron Phoenix was already among them, her superheated hull burning through their armor like it was made of paper. That's one way to solve the overheating problem. Song laughed as her ship carved through the enemy formation. When you're already hotter than most weapons, everything else just feels cool. But the humans weren't done showing off their hidden capabilities. When the Federation's newest battleship, the Pride of Nexus, took a direct hit from 3 void entities and began breaking apart, Admiral Xylax gave the order to abandon ship. Wait, Park's voice came over the communication channel. Before you give up on her, mind if we take a look? Admiral, the ship is falling apart, Xylax protested. The hull is cracked in 17 places, life support is failing, and the main reactor is offline, so it needs some work. Park shrugged. We're pretty good at fixing things. 6 hours later, Velith couldn't believe what he was seeing. The Pride of Nexus was not only flying again, it was back in the battle, firing weapons and maneuvering like nothing had happened. Engineer On floated outside the ship in a spacesuit, welding patches onto the hull while laser fire from enemy ships streaked past her. She seemed completely unconcerned about the battle raging around her. "How is this possible?" Velith asked. "Good as new," unannounced over the radio, wiping grease from her hands even though she was wearing space gloves. "Well, mostly. Try not to turn left too hard. I'm still working on that section." The supposedly destroyed Federation battleship had been held together with what appeared to be construction adhesive, welding patches, and what the humans cheerfully called creative engineering. "It's not pretty," admitted Captain Lee, who was now commanding the repaired ship, "but it works. Sometimes the best solution isn't the elegant one. It's the one that gets the job done." The alert came at 0347 ship time, waking everyone in the fleet from what had been their first peaceful sleep in weeks. Commander Velith was pulled from his rest by the urgent buzzing of his communication device. "All Federation commanders to the command center immediately," came the voice of his aide. "Priority Alpha emergency." Velith rushed through the corridors of the human flagship, his 4 eyes still adjusting to the bright lights. He found Admiral Park standing in front of the main display, his usual relaxed demeanor completely gone. The human's face was stone cold, serious in a way Velith had never seen before. "What's the situation?" General Korth asked as he arrived, his wings buzzing with nervous energy. Park's voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something that made Velith's skin crawl with worry. "Long-range sensors just picked up the main Void Swarm fleet. They've changed course." "Changed course to where?" asked Admiral Xylex. Park turned to face them, and Velith saw something in the human's eyes that he had never seen before. Not fear exactly, but something deeper and more dangerous. "Earth. They're heading straight for our homeworld." The silence in the room was complete. Even the background hum of the ship's engine seemed to quiet down, as if the vessel itself understood the gravity of the situation. "How long do we have?" Velith asked quietly. "At their current speed, maybe 6 days before they reach the Sol system," Park replied. "Maybe 7, if we're lucky." Park activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice echoed through every human ship in the fleet, reaching the thousands of people who had been fighting alongside the Federation for months. "All ships, this is Admiral Park. I need everyone to listen carefully. The Void Swarm has changed tactics. They're no longer focusing on Federation worlds. They're going for our home. They're heading to Earth." Velith could hear the change immediately. The background chatter that always filled human communication channels went silent. The casual jokes, the random conversations, the sound of children playing, it all stopped. "New rules now, people," Park continued. "We've been playing nice, holding back, trying not to scare our Federation friends too much. That stops today. It's time to show these metal monsters what happens when you threaten our families." That's when Velith saw something that changed his understanding of humans forever. The ships around them began to transform. What had looked like chaotic collections of civilian vessels revealed themselves to be something else entirely. Cargo holds that Velith thought contained supplies opened up to show fully equipped manufacturing centers, assembly lines that could build weapons, ammunition, and spare parts while traveling through space. "I don't understand," General Korth whispered. "Those were cargo containers yesterday." Captain Jang overheard him and smiled grimly. "No, General. Those were mobile factories. We just didn't need them before." The ship's civilian quarters began reconfiguring themselves. Walls folded away, revealing tactical command centers that had been hidden in plain sight. The families that Velith thought were just along for the ride turned out to be engineers, technicians, and specialists who could turn any piece of metal into a weapon. "Captain Jang," Velith said slowly, "what exactly is your fleet?" Jang looked out at the ships, transforming around them. Children who had been playing in recreational areas were now helping their parents prepare ammunition. Teachers were setting up communication networks. The ship's cook was apparently also an explosives expert. We're not a military expedition, Commander Jang explained patiently. We never were. We're a civilization that happens to be armed. When humans go to war, we don't just send soldiers, we send everyone. The whole community. Mining equipment that Velith had assumed was for asteroid operations revealed itself to be weapons unlike anything in the Federation arsenal. Drills became armor-piercing projectiles. Industrial lasers became ship-killing beams. Even the recreational areas transformed. The ship's gymnasium became a tactical planning center, complete with holographic displays and strategic computers. The families, the children, ... double quotes, Velith began, are part of the war effort, Jang finished. The kids spot problems, adults miss. The teachers keep everyone educated and informed. The families provide the emotional support that keeps everyone fighting. When you threaten our home, you're not just fighting our military, you're fighting our entire society. Through the observation windows, Velith could see human ships changing their formations. What had seemed like random positioning now revealed itself as a carefully planned defensive network. Every vessel had a specific role, every crew member a vital function. You've been holding back, Velith realized. This whole time, you've been holding back. We didn't want to scare you, Admiral Park said simply. Federation species are used to clean, organized warfare with rules and protocols. We didn't think you were ready to see what humans look like when we stop pretending to be civilized. The transformation was complete now. The ragtag fleet of converted civilian ships had become something that looked like it could take on the entire Void Swarm single-handedly, and maybe it could. We didn't come here to help you fight the Void Swarm, Park continued, his voice carrying across the fleet communications. We came to put ourselves between the swarm and everything worth protecting. If they want to get to the rest of the galaxy, they'll have to go through us first. And if they want Earth, added Captain Kim from her ship, they'll have to kill every single one of us. The human fleet began moving toward Earth, not to defend it, but to create an impenetrable wall of armed, determined humans that nothing in the universe could break through. The final battle began at the edge of Earth's solar system, near the orbit of Pluto. The Void Swarm had arrived in force, thousands of mechanical entities that had grown larger and more complex by consuming entire civilizations. They moved through space like a plague of metal locusts, ready to devour humanity's homeworld. Commander Velith watched from the bridge of Admiral Park's flagship as the enemy fleet approached. The void entities were massive now, some as large as small moons, covered in weapons and armor stolen from 100 different species. They pulsed with stolen energy, their hulls gleaming with technology that shouldn't have been able to work together, but somehow did. They're beautiful, in a terrifying way, whispered General Korth, his compound eyes reflecting the light from the approaching swarm. Admiral Park stood quietly at the center of the bridge, watching the tactical display. The human fleet was vastly outnumbered, maybe 50 human ships against thousands of void entities. By any reasonable calculation, this should have been a massacre. Admiral, reported Captain Kim from her ship, they're moving into attack formation. We're detecting energy buildups across their entire fleet. They're preparing to fire everything they have. Park nodded calmly and activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice was steady, almost conversational, as if he was discussing dinner plans rather than the fate of humanity. All ships, this is Admiral Park. You all know what's at stake here. Behind us is Earth, our families, our friends, our home. The Void Swarm wants to consume everything we care about and turn it into more of themselves. He paused, looking out at the approaching enemy fleet. Well, if they want to consume something, let's give them something that'll give them indigestion for the rest of eternity. Park's next words were simple: light it up. What happened next would be remembered by the Federation as the day space itself caught fire. The first thing that happened was impossible. The sun, Sol, the star that had warmed Earth for billions of years, began to pulse. Not naturally, but in a controlled rhythm that seemed to follow some kind of pattern. "What are they doing to their star?" Velith asked in horror. "Controlled stellar manipulation," explained Dr. Kong, the human fleet's chief scientist, as casually as if she was describing how to make coffee. "We've been working on it for a while. The trick is not to let the star actually explode, just squeeze it enough to redirect some of its energy." The sun's light changed color, shifting from yellow to blue, to something beyond the visible spectrum. Energy poured out of it in directed beams that turned entire sections of space into walls of pure plasma. Void entities that flew into these energy fields simply ceased to exist. Their matter converted into light and heat, but that was just the beginning. Captain O's ship, the Crazy Horse, did something that made Velith's brain hurt to watch. She flew directly toward a small black hole that the Void Swarm was using as cover, accelerating to speeds that should have torn her vessel apart. "Oh, what are you doing?" Park asked over the communication system. "Physics experiment," came her cheerful reply. "I want to see if we can use gravitational slingshot effects to launch projectiles at near light speed." "That's impossible," General Korth buzzed. "The gravitational forces near the event horizon would crush any ship." "Yeah, that's what I thought too," O replied. "But I modified the hull with some exotic matter we found in that nebula last month. Turns out it makes the ship kind of flexible in interesting ways." Velith watched in amazement as O's ship disappeared into the black hole's event horizon, the point where nothing, not even light, should be able to escape. For a moment, there was nothing. Then the ship emerged from the other side, somehow. Intact, its hull glowing with equations written in some kind of exotic matter. "Physics is more like guidelines anyway," O reported cheerfully, as her ship launched projectiles that moved so fast they created their own gravitational waves. The Void Swarm found themselves fighting not just human ships, but the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Gravity became a weapon. Time was used as a shield. The humans had somehow convinced space itself to fight on their side. Captain Yoon's ship turned a supernova remnant into a giant cannon, using the collapsed star's magnetic field to launch chunks of neutron star material at the enemy. Each projectile hit with the force of a nuclear bomb, but moved so fast that the void entities couldn't adapt their defenses in time. "How is this possible?" Velith asked Dr. Kang. "Humans are very good at making friends with dangerous things," she replied simply. "Stars, black holes, the basic forces of physics. Once you understand how they work, they're really quite cooperative." The battle raged for hours, with humans using tactics that shouldn't have been possible. They folded space to create shortcuts for their weapons. They convinced time to flow backward in small areas, confusing void entities that suddenly found themselves moving in reverse. They even managed to weaponize entropy itself, causing enemy ships to age rapidly and fall apart. But the strangest moment came at the very end. The last void entity, a massive construct the size of a small planet, was surrounded by human ships but seemed impossible to destroy. Its adaptive armor had learned to counter every weapon the humans possessed. That's when Dr. Han, the fleet's xenobiologist, tried something completely different. "I'm sending over a little present," she announced, launching what appeared to be a simple data packet toward the enemy vessel. "What kind of present?" Park asked. "A virus, but not the kind that destroys computer systems. This one does something more interesting." The void entity received the data packet and, following its programming, began to analyze and integrate the new information. But instead of gaining new capabilities, something unexpected happened. The massive construct began to disassemble itself. Not violently, not destructively, but carefully and methodically. It took apart its own weapons, its armor, its engines, and began using the components to build something entirely different. where the planet-sized war machine had been. A small garden now floated in space. Flowers made of crystallized metal bloomed among trees, whose leaves were sheets of processed data. It was beautiful and completely impossible. "What did you do?" Velith asked in amazement. Dr. Han smiled. "I gave it a new purpose. Instead of consuming and destroying, I convinced it that building and creating would be more fulfilling. The virus doesn't destroy the entity's consciousness, it just changes what it wants to do with its existence. You turned a war machine into a gardener. Seemed more poetic that way," Han replied. "Besides, the galaxy could use more gardens and fewer weapons." The Void Swarm was gone. Not destroyed, but transformed. The last of humanity's enemies had become the first of its friends. 6 months had passed since the final battle with the Void Swarm, and Commander Velith was starting to realize something that made his 4 eyes twitch with worry. The humans were still here, not just visiting, not just cleaning up the mess from the war. They had moved in. What used to be empty space where the Void Swarm had consumed entire star systems was now bustling with human activity. Asteroid fields that had been picked clean were now full of mining stations and processing plants. Dead planets that had been stripped of all life were sprouting green domes and silver cities. Velith floated in his observation pod, watching a group of human children play zero-gravity tag inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Their parents had somehow turned the floating rock into a recreational center, complete with parks, playgrounds, and what appeared to be a small zoo filled with creatures from a dozen different worlds. How did they do all this so fast? He wondered aloud. His aide, a young Krillian named Zeph, looked up from his datapad. "The humans work constantly, Commander. They don't seem to need much sleep, and they treat massive construction projects like games. Yesterday I watched them build an entire space station while singing work songs." Velith had been meaning to ask Admiral Park about this, but the human was always busy with some new project. Today was their weekly coffee meeting, a tradition that had somehow started during the war and continued afterward. Park insisted that all important conversations should happen over coffee, and Velith had learned not to argue with human customs. He found Park in what used to be the flagship's main conference room, but was now apparently a combination office, workshop, and greenhouse. The human was sitting at a desk made from salvaged Void Swarm hull plating, tending to a small plant while reviewing construction reports on a tablet. "Ah, Velith." Park looked up with his usual smile. "Perfect timing. I just got the coffee maker working again. Want some, Admiral Park?" Velith began carefully, settling into the chair that Park had modified for his alien physiology. "I need to ask you something." "Sure, shoot." Park poured 2 cups of the dark liquid that humans seemed to need for basic survival. "When exactly are you planning to return home?" Park paused with his coffee cup halfway to his lips, looking genuinely confused. "Return home? What do you mean? To Earth? To your soul system? When are you and your people going back to where you came from?" Park set down his cup and looked at Velith, as if the question made no sense at all. "Why would we go back? This is home now. This is home." Velith's translator made confused beeping sounds. "Well, yeah. We followed the Void Swarm's path backward through the galaxy. And there's a lot of good real estate out here that nobody's using. Why leave?" Velith felt one of his headaches coming on. "But Admiral, you came here to fight a war. The war is over. Surely your people want to return to their families, their jobs, their normal lives." Park gestured toward the window, where they could see human ships moving between new settlements like busy insects. "Our families are here. Our jobs are here. This is our normal life now." As if to prove his point, a group of human engineers floated past the window, using some kind of advanced welding equipment to attach a new section to the space station. They were laughing and joking as they worked, treating the dangerous job of construction in the vacuum of space like a fun group activity. "But what about Earth?" Velith pressed. "Don't you miss your home planet? Earth will always be there." Park said simply. But out here, there's so much space to explore, so many things to build, so many problems to solve. It's like the universe gave us the ultimate home improvement project. Through the observation windows, Velith could see the scope of what the humans had accomplished in just 6 months. Dead solar systems were coming back to life with human settlements. Nebulae were being shaped into artistic formations that could be seen from light years away. Even the wreckage from the final battle had been recycled into new structures. Admiral Velith said slowly, "The Federation Council thought they were hiring mercenaries for a single military campaign, and instead, you got neighbors." Park finished with a grin. Surprise. Neighbors who apparently view the entire galaxy as their personal construction project. "Hey, we're being responsible about it," Park protested. "We're cleaning up the mess the Void Swarm left behind, terraforming dead worlds, and making sure nothing like this happens again." Making sure how? Park's expression grew more serious. "Someone needs to keep an eye on things, via. The universe has a tendency to try new ways of ending black holes going unstable. Rogue AI networks, ancient weapon systems waking up. We've gotten pretty good at talking the universe out of destroying itself." As if summoned by their conversation, Captain Kim's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, we've got a situation in the Kepler sector. Some kind of ancient automated defense system just woke up and started attacking civilian ships." "On our way," Park replied calmly, finishing his coffee. "See what I mean?" he said to Velith. "There's always something." "You're going to fix an ancient weapons system?" Velith asked. "Or make friends with it?" Park shrugged. "You'd be surprised how many galaxy-threatening disasters just need someone to listen to their problems." As Park prepared to leave, Velith watched human children playing in the asteroid park outside. Their parents were busy terraforming a nearby moon, turning its barren surface into something that could support life. In the distance, human artists were using controlled stellar emissions to paint pictures in space that would be visible from neighboring star systems. The Federation had expected their human allies to go home after the war. Instead, they had acquired permanent neighbors who treated the impossible as routine, viewed the entire galaxy as a challenging but manageable living space, and apparently considered universe-threatening emergencies to be just another item on their daily to-do list. "You know what the scary part is?" Velith said to his aide, as they watched Park's ship head toward the latest crisis. "What, Commander?" "I think they're actually making the galaxy a better place." In the distance, human laughter echoed across the communication channels, as another ancient threat was probably being turned into either a tourist attraction or a community garden. The Federation hadn't just survived the Void Swarm, they had been adopted by something far more dangerous than any mechanical plague. Humans with unlimited time, unlimited space, and an unshakable belief that every problem had a solution if you just tried hard enough, and somehow, that felt like the best possible outcome.